back with another video, and today I wanted to talk about Jack's conversation with Solomon the Surmounter concerning the nature of SE and if calling it force or power are apt terms to use for it. A little side comment. I don't, as I watched that video, if you guys haven't seen it, you should watch it. It really gets to the core of the way socionics defines SE. SE, extroverted sensation, is defined as force in socionics, in most schools of socionics. And there is a definitional or logical reason, obviously, that extroverted sensation is defined this way. One of the many reasons why that's the case is because of the elemental dichotomies that make up the elements. What makes the elements what they are? You have elements that are extroverted, introverted. What does that mean? You have rational, irrational. That's another tier. You have logic versus ethics. That's another tier. Basically subdivisions that isolate and highlight aspects of what the element is. And once you deductively start from beginning to end, the one word names, titles for the elements make sense. In E, being extroverted and abstract and static and irrational comes out to be idea or potential. And the name should follow from those dichotomies. And that's the whole point. And so I'm not necessarily get into why SE is force. If you want to watch that video, you can. But this is just more of my own commentary after watching the video. The one thing that I don't really understand is why this is such a complicated concept to grasp. It seems like the reality is people that come from MBTI, when they get into socionics, still operate under MBTI presuppositions. And this is the reason for the confusion. It's because they're thinking about, for example, judging versus perceiving. And this is one of the biggest hang-ups in the debate, was that Solomon the Surmounter was talking about judgment and how an SE person is using judgment, an SE lead, when they're making decisions. And Jack responded basically by saying that every element implies decision making. There are no elements that just don't interact with decisions. Any person that has that element or any of the elements is going to necessarily make decisions from those elements. It doesn't matter whether or not it's a rational or irrational or judging versus perceiving question. That really doesn't make a difference. So the real way to distinguish this, well, one of the many ways, is what kind of decision are you making? Are you making decisions that are in a certain category, and what about that decision made you make it, right? And that's where it gets into the elements. But nevertheless, it doesn't matter what element you pick, you're going to make a decision using your elements, using your cognitive functions, whatever. That's just common sense. Like, it doesn't follow that if I'm making a decision in extroverted sensation to push for the things that I want and to challenge the status quo or challenge the hierarchy or whatever the case is, that I'm doing that from one of my judging functions. Why does that follow? Why? So there's a equivocation happening with being a rational type and making decisions. Every person that lives makes decisions, and that's just a part of having human agency. Now, when we get into the specifics of the decision made, we are taking in information about the world around us, obviously, and that can be from one or many of our information elements. But you're still going to make decisions using your SE. If you're an SE lead, it doesn't matter. Like if I'm pushing for something, I didn't just stumble across some challenge and then I'm just an automaton that can't make choices. That just doesn't make any sense. So that was one thing one of the biggest things that I took away from watching that was like, why is this still a thing? I don't understand why people can't research the dichotomies, the information element dichotomies, and just deduce from it why the term force is applied. Like it doesn't. I don't understand why. And the only conceivable way that it's an issue is if you're just ignorant on socionics and or you're still operating under MBTI definitions. And for a while, I just started to realize that this is always going to be a problem because people are just intellectually lazy. They're not good critical thinkers. Most people, they get hung up on the most insignificant things, and they don't realize that the problem that they're crying about isn't really even a problem. Like extroverted sensation is extroverted, which means that it's building upon itself, taking in more. It's concrete. It's static. The definition itself that most writers have written regarding SE is about object versus object conflict, and one wins out. One has more mass than the other and uses its mass in order to get in a better position, right? Gain more leverage. It's like, how would you get physical, the MBTI kind of definition of qualia, things that you perceive with your senses? How do you get from those dichotomies that kind of definition of SE? Well, you can't, because those dichotomies don't exist in MBTI. So it doesn't even, it's like, why even try to make them synonymous when they aren't? Yeah, it's about the here and now. It's about building upon objects in the here and now, accumulating. Okay, well, if I'm accumulating a bunch of objects in front of me, it's implied that there's going to be a competition at some point because I could be grabbing someone else's resources. As I move out and I extend in space, I'm going to come against something else that's trying to fight for the same thing. It just follows logically from the dichotomies. If there were no dichotomies, or there were insignificant dichotomies or not enough dichotomies, you could maybe argue that the term force is arbitrary and haphazard. There's no logical reason for it. But there is a logical grounding for it based upon just pure logic and just categories, definitions, classifications, When you describe something that's not physically present, you're not talking usually about SE. Why? Because it's concrete. It's in the here and now by default. If I'm talking about memories, or I'm talking about dreams, or I'm talking about anything abstract that isn't physically tangibly in front of me, by default, I can't be talking about extroverted sensation. It's that simple. And I don't really know why that's a real hard concept to grasp. I just don't.